Hey guys, it's Kian, and today we're going to be checking out the brand new amp sim by Neural DSP, the Omega Granophyre, and how it stacks up to the old but gold Fortin Nameless. Let's have a look. So originally the plan for this video was just to do a demo of the whole plugin and go through everything one by one, until I realized that when this plugin came out there was about 50 YouTube videos from different YouTubers who had already got the plugin before the release date so they can make a video on it. I then came to the conclusion that it'd be a pretty cool idea to demo this plugin alongside Fortin Nameless, which is the first ever amp sim that Neural DSP released, which is still old but gold. Even though I own other amp sims from Neural DSP and have played every single one for a trial as they've come out, Fortin Nameless has still been my favourite, so I thought it'd be a great idea just to see how it would compare. If you're wondering where that intro song came from, it's actually a metal rendition of Dua Lipa's Don't Start Now, which I originally put on my Instagram at KianHushmanLive, which you guys can find somewhere on the screen. But with all that being said, let's just have a deep look into it and compare the plugins one by one. Okay, so I'm just going to run through everything that's happening on the screen right now. So basically, we have 4 guitar tracks running at the same time, all recording at the same time. I'll show you why in a minute. Got my microphone here, and then I got a DI in case anything shits itself, and I can quickly reamp later. So these 4 guitar tracks, I'll go through them one by one. The first one, they're all labeled here. The first one is just Fortin by itself, with the cabs loaded within Fortin. The second one is the Omega Granophyre using the cabs within the Omega Granophyre. And then just as a wildcard, I've got Fortin running with an external cabinet. So I've got ML SoundLab cabs loaded up in cab 3, and I've got the exact same cab and program and all that stuff loaded up in number 4, which is using the Omega with the same cab. This cab is a blend of a Zilla Fatboy 2x12, one speaker being a Vintage 30 mic with the SM57, and then the second speaker being a Creamback H mic with the SM57, and then like a third IR is the Misha Mix 08 bulb in cab pack 13, if I'm not mistaken. So those 3 are blended together, and you get this IR file here that's loaded up both in number 4 and number 3 to keep it consistent. So right now, you're only hearing Fortin. Me and you are only hearing Fortin right now. Even though all these other ones are recording, they're all turned off from the mixer. They're not connected to anything. But the Fortin it's connected to the Gran mix bus. So I can hear the Fortin, you can hear the Fortin. And that's so that they're not all playing at the same time. Otherwise, it would sound like garbage. So what I will do is I'm going to play a couple riffs, and then in the post I'm going to edit it so that I'll keep playing, but it'll switch between the Fortin, the Omega, the Fortin with the IR, and then the Omega with the IR, so you guys can hear the tonal differences between them. And if you haven't figured it out already, the reason why I'm having the 2 with the wildcard here with the Fortin and the Omega both loaded up in the same cabinet response is so that, because it's the exact same cabinet response, you guys can really hear like the little nuances and the little intricate differences between the 2 plugins in terms of amp head and stuff like that. So I'm just going to go through all the plugin settings and the plugin chain real quick. This plugin chain is just here, like I load it up whenever I play. I'll quickly go through all the plugins loaded up, even though I'm not even using them. G-Tune is just like a tuner plugin. Pitch Proof is a VST that in real time pitches your guitar down or up depending on what you set it at. So right now I'm in drop A flat, and I've got it set at -3 semitones, which means when I activate it, I will be in drop F. So right now I'm in drop A flat. Activate it, and I am in drop F. Obviously, it's not like the most accurate sounding thing in the world. I just put it on in case I want to play with a song that I can't be bothered tuning my guitar into, so I'll just chuck that on. It's a quick fix. Next, I load up a gate in my plugin chain. Reason being is that some plugins that I own, like the Archetype Nolly, for instance, the gate on there isn't as tight as I'd like it to be, so I use this gate to kind of compensate. With that being said though, some plugins like the Fortin Nameless, since they do have the built-in noise gate here and another noise gate up here, it really does get tight and I don't find myself activating the gate. And I found myself not activating it with the Omega as well. I think they reworked the algorithm for the gate. It sounds really tight and really good. So now loading up Fortin, I've got oversampling turned on high, standard procedure, gate turned up, Zul activated with a little bit more than halfway. Reason being is that when I was doing the intro song, those beginning chords like it wasn't clamping down quick enough on the chords. Like there was a little bit of like feedback coming after it. I'll show you guys quickly. So it was kind of like here and I had to turn it up. This is what it sounded like before I changed it. I don't know if you guys can tell, but there's like a little hiss at the end of it. So when you turn it up, it just goes, it just gets in the bin. So that's turned up, hex drive is off, and I turn the grind on. The reason why I turn the grind on instead of the hex drive is because the grind is more suited towards like 7 strings and stuff with lower tuning, because it really does cut out the low end. And the hex drive, if I was doing 6-string stuff, I'd probably turn it on. But for now, we have the grind turned on. Moving on to the actual amp, presence kind of sitting at around 3, bass at around 6. Mids just pushed up a little bit over halfway because I do like a little bit of mids in my tone, and then treble turned down a little bit because the Fortin Nameless is pretty infamous for being high sizzle and very high gain, so I turn it down just a touch. Gain 2, I've rolled back a little bit. Usually when you load up the plugin, it's sitting on 10. I put it back at around 8 or just before 8 just to combat some of the flubbiness that I was getting in the tone. And then gain 1, I've got it set pretty much where it is when you load the plugin. For cabinet, I've got 2 mics. I've got the 57 and the 184, both in their starting position. I haven't messed around with any mic levels or nothing. I didn't want to get too complicated with it because I just wanted to show you guys the differences without making it too complicated. And that's pretty much it. And then the same one, I've got Omega, so I could switch between them in here. Nothing happening there. Cab Lab, so I can show it later in these two. This is just to have like a lo-fi effect. If I want to play with a lo-fi or record a lo-fi, I load up this EQ and it does the lo-fi thing. If I turn it on, turn it off, and I just go back to normal. And then just like a reverb in case I want to do a solo or something, I'll just quickly chuck on the reverb and start playing away. Now moving on to the Omega, it's the exact same plugin chain, only difference is that Fortin's not loaded and Omega is. So going through the Omega, I've got the overdrive turned on mode 3, which Stephen Ward from Newer DSP said that it's kind of like an 808 kind of OD sound, except a little bit more articulate. So I've got that turned on mode 3, gain all the way off, level somewhere between 7 and 8 like I usually have it, and then tone pushed up. I like my tones in my overdrive pedal, so I have turned it up quite considerably. Again, standard procedure, oversampling on high, gate set pretty high, all that stuff, so it sounds nice and chunky. A little disclaimer I will say before we get into this section is that when dialing in the amp tones, whether it was for the Fortin or the Omega, I didn't really try to match anything. There was no like scientific method. I just did it exactly the way you guys would do it at home, which is you probably play through it, dial it in as you play, or if you want to go the step up, you record DI and then run the VST into the DI, so you guys can like change the amp settings while you're hearing it back and all that stuff. So basically that's just what I did. I played DI, ran it through Fortin, dialed it up until I think it sounded good, and then had like a little break, did the same thing with the Omega, and that's it. So it is fairly subjective, but at the end of the day, this is how I would dial it in, similar to how you would dial it in for your ears. I've turned the gain down just a little bit on the Omega. Reason being is that I kind of like to have the string definition coming through and not have it too washy, and it is on the high gain setting. The difference between the high and low on the Omega is that the high is kind of like a little bit more tighter low end, and it has like that high, it lets the high end breathe, if that makes sense, and the low is kind of like a warmer, kind of like a more flubbier kind of gain. Bass is turned down just a little bit below halfway. Mids are pushed up just a touch because I do like mids, like I was saying before. And treble I have tamed just a little bit, just a very, very little bit. Level is exactly dead in the center. I haven't touched that. And the voice is on the first one. So there's 2 voices in the Omega. There's the first one, and then the second voice, in which has more of an upper mid focus. Personally, I like the lower mid focus, so I leave it there, and when you play with the mid knob, you really do notice the difference. Masks I have pulled back because I don't really like that power amp saturation in any of my tones. I like to have it really articulate and stuff like that. I don't want it to be overpowered by flub, especially when you're playing on a 7-string that's tuned to drop A flat. It can get flubby very quickly, so I did turn it down. Depth I've pushed up a little bit just to compensate for the master being down, to give it some kind of oomph. And the detail, which I see is like a presence knob, I have turned up a little bit. Quick mention that the Omega has 3 different types of tubes that you can play through. So the 6L6s, the EL34s, and the KT66. And this plugin does have a lot more versatility in terms of that. Moving on to the EQ section now. This is turned off because I didn't want to have the EQ activated when comparing it with the Fortin, because it would just be a bit inconsistent with testing and stuff like that, because the Fortin does not have an EQ. But if I did run the EQ and I was just playing with this preset by myself, I'd probably chuck these settings on. And they're not very big moves, but they do color your tone ever so slightly, and it does make it a little bit tighter. So I turned down 250 by 2, I turned down 500 by 0.5, push 1K up by 0.5, turn down 4K by 0.5. I don't want to smash it because there's only some certain frequencies within that 4K range that you need to take out. However, it is good just to tame it just a touch and take it by like half a decibel or something. And then to compensate for that, I push up 8K by 0.5. So just a little comparison. This is before the EQ was turned on. And this is with the EQ turned on. So as you can probably tell, it is a little bit tighter, a little bit more defined, and it does really show that through these little EQ moves. Now moving on to the cabinet section, again I was saying before that I wanted to keep it consistent with the Fortin, so that's what I've done. I've gotten with the same mics, even though they're mic'd up into different cabs obviously, just to get the same kind of sound. I've mic'd it up with a 57 and a 184, and they're both like in the Fortin exactly as they are. I haven't touched any of the positioning or the distances and stuff like that. It's just how it is. Now moving on to the wildcards with the cabinet responses. So all the settings are the exact same between this Fortin, and all the settings are the exact same between this Omega and this Omega. The only difference is that in 3 and 4, the cabinets are turned off, obviously, because we are running the external cab, which I explained before. And I do have the limiter on both IR chains just to level match it across the 4 channels. So if you see here, they should be pretty level. Okay, so now that that's all out the way, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a couple riffs, and like I was saying before, you'll hear the Fortin first, the Omega second, the Fortin with the IR third, and then the Omega with the IR fourth, so you guys can really hear the tonal differences between them. And I'll try and vary the playing. I'll get like big chords, stringy kind of riffs and stuff like that. So here we go. So yeah, hopefully you guys heard the difference between the Omega and the Fortin. At the end of the day, I really think it just comes down to personal preference, because they both sound amazing, and it really just kind of depends on, firstly, what you like and what you want to do with it. In my opinion, I think that the Fortin is more suited towards my playing style and the kind of tone that I'm going for, so I do like the Fortin just a little bit that much more. But with that being said, the Omega does give you a lot more options with different tubes and the EQ between the amp and the cab. However, also, the Fortin does have a little bit more options for pedals, so you get that gate and you also get 2 different types of overdrives. So at the end of the day, it really just comes down to picking and choosing what you want. There is no better plug-in between these two. It's just a different flavor of high gain. It's like chocolate and vanilla. It just depends on what you like. Even with the IR tracks, as powerful as these IRs are, you could hear the difference between them. So yeah, that pretty much just wraps it up for this video. So thank you for watching. If you guys want to see more stuff like this, definitely subscribe, because I will be doing more gear reviews and plug-in in-depth stuff in the future for sure. If you guys like the video, definitely hit like. And until next time, I will catch you guys later. Thank you so much. Ciao.